Hey, good afternoon from Jim's Holiest Coleus. I just want to shoot out another video here as start to move on. You're following along here. As your plants start to progress, it's getting to the point where it's time to get them separated into pots. Depending on how many plants you have and what you're intending on doing. Again, this is just a guide. This is what I do because I grow 300 or 400, and I just do a few flea markets and craft fairs. And again, I don't make a lot of money on these. There's really no overhead. I get the pots are relatively cheap. Again, I own the seeds, so a lot of it is just it's just fun. So as you can see, some of these that I potted last week are starting to show their color. I got a few peppers here, and you might get a few that don't look too good, but they'll come back and needs a little water. These I did last week. That's a kaleidoscope. Really washed out, doesn't come in. There's a kaleidoscope Coleus. So what I'm doing is I have these catering trays. You can get them anywhere, dollar store. You can use whatever you have. Because I'm using these 4-inch nursery pots, they fit well, and it's easy to move them from rack to rack and move them around. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through the pods that I have. I have 3 trays here, and there's one that's going to need to be transplanted. That's easy. When they're a single like that, you can just transplant that whole pod. Just take the netting off and put it into whatever pot you want. Some of these smaller ones obviously are still too young, so they're going to stay and grow out, which is good. That's why I kind of spread them out so I don't go crazy. When you're doing 300 or 400 Coleus plants, unless you have a staff, which I don't, so I kind of spread them out so they grow at stages so I can keep up with them. So here's a line. Now these are, I picked these out. These are the pods that I overseeded. So I'm going to separate these. As you can see. So again, I like to use the Miracle Grow potting mix. I have a bag of potting soil left over from last year, so I'm going to mix that in. But Miracle Grow is really good. It's again, like I said in my other video, it's easy for the young plants to root into. So, all right. So I'm just going to separate these. Again, I'm going to fill these up. Separate these plants. Again, if there was no plant here, you'd fill them. Poke a hole in the center. If it's a single Coleus, you can just make enough room to, again, take the netting off of the pod and just drop the pod down, and then fill the remaining soil around it. And again, they don't require a lot of water. You'll get to know when they do need water. You don't want to overwater them. They don't like soaking wet. So I do water them when I first plant them, and I just keep an eye on them. If they start looking washed out, like that green is not vibrant, then you know you're overwatering them. So, and again, I just rotate them around, making sure, again, this is a great window I have here, so I get lots of sun. And again, I still have some larger pots down here. And then what I do with the larger pots, again, because I have so many plants, is as these grow and they get larger, and I have a better idea what they look like, then I can take, say for instance, I like this plant here, this Coleus. This is a kaleidoscope, and I like this one here. This is say a Jitters Coleus. I like these two, and I want to make a little ornamental pot. So these two will fit. I fill this with some potting soil, topsoil, potting soil mix, and then I transplant these two again. So I do a number of those also. It seems like a little extra work, but it's necessary to get these into the 4-inch planters so we can get some growth going on. They're not going to grow in these little pods for long. So again, this is just a guide for what you're doing. If you're only growing a dozen or half a dozen or 2 dozen plants for yourself, you do what you got to do. But just the main thing to get them going, to get them growing here on the East Coast. These are not going to go out until June because they thrive in the hot, humid weather. So it's too early to put them outside, way too early. The nights have to be above 60 degrees. Otherwise, these will die. So they stay indoors until, and again, by June, these will be much, much larger and more established. And then by then, you could decide what you want to do with them. Here's a rooting from last year. And again, a couple of my other plants. This one wasn't doing too well. It was on the other side of the house. It wasn't getting enough light, so I moved it. I cut some of these things. That's not doing too well, some of these branches. So, but again, it's still green. It's not dead. So, okay, so I hope this helps out. Thanks for following along. And we'll post another video in a few weeks, show you how these are growing. Again, now that these are in the nursery pots, and we rotate them around, giving them sun and water. The Miracle Grow potting mix has fertilizer in it. Coleus don't really require a lot of fertilizer, so you don't have to go crazy with that. But you'll see these will really start to grow. Okay. All right, thanks for following Jim's Holiest of Coleus, and I'll talk to you soon. Stay tuned.